What's up, everybody? This is Dan Physics from Ex Machina Soundworks here in Brooklyn, New York, and today we're here with the one and only Brian Bender of Mother Brain Studios. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm great, man. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, doing all right. I'm glad you're be able to take the time to do this today. It's been a while since we've caught up, so it'll be nice. I guess we'll just straight away get into it. I just want to ask you, could you share a little bit about your background and how you got started in the music industry?
Yeah, so I'm kind of a musical polyglot. I tend to wear a lot of hats professionally. Mostly I work these days as a producer, mixer, composer, kind of split between film and TV and music pretty equally. Um, I started initially, God, 20 fucking years ago at this point, working. My first job out of college was working for the minimalist composer Philip Glass at his studio in New York, RIP Looking Glass Studios. So I came up at Looking Glass. I was lucky enough to work at Electric Lady for about a year with that mixer and producer Russ Elevato. And then after about 5 years, the sort of usual former version of the assistant pipeline, I had enough people in my corner, enough clients that were kind of calling me regularly that I went freelance full time at that point. Built 3 or 4 studios in Brooklyn and have now been in LA for 10 years.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Well, so what were some of your early influences?
Oh man. I mean, like as a fan, I was born in 81, right? So that's like the same year that MTV was born. So I
Hmm.
grew up in Indiana and like MTV was the like window into culture for me. So I wanted to be fucking Melly Mel when I grew up. You know what I mean? Like I saw Dr. Dre and Ed Lover, like Yo MTV Rap, and the message was like the hippest thing I had ever seen at age 4 or whatever, you know.
Right.
So I was lucky enough that neither of my parents were musicians, but my dad was really into music and had like
Hmm.
a CD player in the 80s back before that was really a thing. So one of the things that we would do regularly was go to the record store and just that kind of the ambient access to culture in the Midwest. Nobody was foisting it on me, and there wasn't anyone in my family that was like directing me there. But like, yeah, I just got really curious about music and that side of culture at a very young age, and it has turned into my day job.
Well, it's a fun day job, I'm sure.
It sure is, man. Yeah.
Well, so can you tell us about a particular project that sorry, let me rephrase that. Can you tell us about a project you're particularly proud of? And like maybe what made it special?
Sure, yeah. Well, a little bit of backstory. I think I have one of the few Ex Machina Atmos situations in this
Hmm.
space, right? You helped me
Yep.
put that together for a project last year that I was particularly excited about. A good friend of mine is Michael Stein, one of the 2 composers on Stranger Things. And
Hmm.
Netflix and Lakeshore wanted to do an Atmos, like sort of special release for some of the score from season 4. So
Hmm.
Stein called me to do the Atmos mixes because he knows that I work in surround a lot, and that was the sort of impetus that I needed to go finally and get an immersive controller and get some heights. And yeah, so I was able to mix 3 songs from season 4 of Stranger Things, the theme, of course, and then 2 other pieces of music that were original for that season in immersive. And that was
Wow.
actually my first swing at Atmos too, which was super fun. And I am just really proud of the way, especially the theme came out. There's a lot of it's like kind of a remix. So there's like a lot of very adventurous sound design for the first 2 minutes, and then it turns into the piece of music that everybody knows. But
Hmm.
as a consequence of that, we were able to do a lot of really fun and interesting things. And Michael's obviously such a design-oriented person that he was really down to try shit and really push the envelope creatively as well.
Nice.
We did something that I think reads pretty well, which is like we were describing it as like a spatial shepherd tone. Well, you know, a shepherd tone works, right? Like there's one
Right,
tone that
right,
goes
right.
up,
Yep.
but
Hmm.
we tried to replicate that spatially, right? So you get the sensation of this piece of music coming forward the whole time, and we kind of used a similar technique where there were a couple of tracks, like kind of a very modern version of the OG Eddie Kramer technique, where you've got 2 things on faders and they're panning around. We had something that was panning front to back all the time, and a couple of tracks of that were like going through the sound field,
Oh,
and
wow. Oh,
yeah, it's a really interesting sensation that I don't feel like we were trying a bunch of stuff on that I don't feel like I've ever heard anyone talk about, and haven't really heard in other mixes before or since. So
hmm.
I'm pretty proud of
Have
how those
have
came out.
have those been released?
Yeah, yeah, it's on Apple
Oh,
Music. It's kind of like buried a little in a weird way. Like I can send you the link, but
mhm.
yeah, yeah,
Nice. Yeah, definitely. Like, I'll remind you to do that offline. I would definitely
yeah,
like to check
yeah.
that out. So,
I've been joking with everyone that it's like your fucking uncle who's into stereos. He gets his new stereo, and this is like the new stereo music, because it does all the things.
right.
Yeah. So,
So, well, I guess how would you describe your approach to your philosophy to mixing and production?
well, for better or for worse, I don't tend to be very template oriented. And especially like coming on the composer side of the world as well, like people I know tend to be very in that mode, which I understand, especially if you're working in software instruments, having a very well realized template can just save you a lot of time. Like, you literally make a new track and have to wait for the instrument to load. But there's like a weird sort of psychological bargain that I have with myself that even if I'm the same person doing similar shit on a different day, and making myself go through the process of instantiating a compressor, instantiating EQ, and instantiating reverb, and doing all those kinds of things like in real time. I don't know. I feel like it keeps me honest. So, and I don't know a lot of people that tend to work like that. I don't have anything on buses architected ahead of time. I don't have anything on the two mix pretty much ever. Um, and yeah, I just try to. This is something that I picked up from Russell Avato. Like the first four things that he would do when he started a mix was to listen to the song. And I know it seems so obvious, but a lot of times I feel like now the tendency is to just like put it on and start
Start
messing around
right.
immediately,
Yes. Yep.
And like he had this kind of armistice treaty with himself where he would like not touch any faders, not touch any EQs, not change shit for the first like 20 minutes of listening. Just solo it and zoom in and understand the musical function. So I would say that that's something that I do every time is to just start and just it's so obvious and seems a little contrite to say, but like really just listen and understand what's trying to be done with this piece of music emotionally.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I'm actually very similar in that my approach is kind of, I don't start with, I might have ideas of like, oh, maybe, as I'm listening, I might want to compress this kick drum a certain way or whatever,
Yeah,
but
right.
I don't say presets. I don't like use presets. It's sort of like, I don't even, you're right. I load all this stuff into the song and start listening and then it'd be like, oh, maybe like this is how I'm going to approach, I might have a bag of tricks of certain things I like to do in certain scenarios. But yeah, I'm with you.
Exactly.
It's like it's better to start with a fresh plate because you don't even know sometimes. Like I mean, one thing I've learned with using the speakers is that most of my bag of tricks were maybe trying to fight inequities of listening prior
Sure.
before and not
Sure.
actually functional to like working on a mix. So
Sure.
yeah, I like to start fresh. I think it's a smart approach. So so could you explain some of the like? Or let me say this again. Can you explain how Ex Machina loudspeakers have maybe impacted your work? Do they provide any unique benefits that other speakers in your experience in the past don't?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the easy answer is like again, a very simple one. Like the only thing that we really care about in this world is translation, right? Like it's
Hmm.
great. You can build a anechoic room and the ideal listening environment. And if it sounds like shit on somebody else's system, you haven't done the job.
Right.
So that I think, when you sent me these to check out, I had been on the speakers that I was on previously for 17 years. They were the same set of speakers. I literally bought the actual amps that were the A room amps in Looking Glass. So I had
Hmm.
like kept that chain as much the same as I could the whole time. But in filmic work and some of the more pop and low end heavy hip hop stuff that I was doing, I was just lacking in a little bit of the clarity and definition sub 60 hertz in the speakers that I was on. So yeah, there's the I was formerly mixing on Pro X Studio 100s, which I think are very vaunted for the mid-range phase linearity. That's what
Hmm.
I hear a lot of people like NS10s and Pro X. Like people tend to really like those speakers, in my opinion, because of the crossover phase interaction is pretty good. One of the things that struck me about these Ex Machinas immediately was, I put them up on the console, and in like 15 minutes, I felt like I understood them, which is very, very rarely my experience of listening to kind of any speaker, but especially like, the sort of more modern, larger driver, active speakers, I think tend to flatter a little bit. And so
Hmm.
like putting these up and just turning music on and putting on a favorite reference, I was like, oh, I know what these are doing. And I sort of feel like from minute 16, I started making mixes that translated as good as or better than speakers that I had been working on for almost 2 decades.
Hmm.
So yeah, I just think the real linearity in these speakers across the design perspective is what makes them the winner for me.
Awesome. So, like, have it, like, would you say they've made your work process simpler or faster, easier in any way?
Yeah, all the above, man. More fun. It's like they're loud and clean, and like you can do the like fun for the clients listen, or you can do the like brutally quiet 50 dB SPL dialogue edit pass, and like they're just kind of there for all of it. So, like on the one hand, I think it's like a dangerous kind of slippery slope if you start being too obsessed with making your monitoring environment like pleasurable. But on the other hand, like these also are just like a joy to work on them too. Like I don't feel like they like flatter the source, but they're just so it feels like a straight line between what I'm trying to get accomplished and what the information that I'm getting back from them about what I'm doing is actually doing.
Nice. Hmm. So, I guess, what advice would you give maybe other artists or engineers that might be considering like Ex Machina speakers for their setup?
I
Like, if
mean,
you're
just
having a
look.
conversation with somebody, like,
Yeah, I think the simplest, and I've actually sold a lot of pairs of these speakers for you guys, I think too. And the the way I always begin and in that conversation is just check them out. Just
right?
check them out. I I don't really believe in sales in this particular way. Like everybody has taste, everybody has a tool set that they like, but like for
Right.
me, like I said, inside of 20 minutes, I was like, they're getting my money for these.
Right.
you
Right.
know, like it
Yeah.
was just obvious to me that this is what I needed and what I wanted to be working on, and yeah, there hasn't been a client that's come through here that hasn't like been like, what are these? How much are these? What? Where can I? Who should I introduce me to the guy? You know what I'm saying? Like that
Yeah.
just happens so frequently. So
Nice.
the simple advice I think is just check them out, and if they make sense for you, great. I think they're awesome speakers.
Hmm. Nice. That's great. So, are there any upcoming projects or collaborations you've got that you could share with us?
Sure. Yeah, there's a bunch of fun stuff that just happened. This was a busy year, and all this stuff is about to come out. So I have been working a lot with that composer Chris Bowers, kind of for 10 years. But in the last couple of years, we got a couple of fun things that are on the way out the door. One of which is the new Marvel show for Nick Fury.
Oh, wow.
Uh, yeah, Secret Invasion. It's like a 6 episode Disney Plus thing. Chris did the score. I got to do a bunch of additional music and sound design and programming and all that stuff. And then I also just finished the score mix for an incredible film that Netflix is putting out called They Clone Tyrone. It was written by my good friend Joel Taylor, who also directed it. I guess Joel and Tony Rettenhouse wrote it, and Joel directed it, and it's just amazing. It's John Boyega and Jamie Foxx and Tiana Paris, and it's like kind of like an invasion of the body snatchers, sci-fi in the hood movie. The score is like brilliant score by the composer Desmond Murray, very informed by like great exploitation soundtracks and coffee and movies like that. And I got to do a 7-1 mix for that for the score, which just came out great. The final re-record mix was the gentleman who mixed Whiplash, so the mix came out just beautifully, and the movie is fucking hilarious. I can't wait for that to be out in the world. That'll be out next month. Yeah, July 21st. I want to say it comes out.
Wow.
Uh, so
That's
those
the
just
Netflix
finished up.
one.
Yep. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, cool.
And then I've been doing some fun like TV work too. I just finished up doing a bunch of additional music for my homie Pierre Charles for this show East New York, which is like a classic network cop show procedural. I was doing like what I was jokingly calling network trap for that. A lot of high hat, you know what I'm saying? But that was fun. It was a very different kind of challenge. It was 21 episodes, just back to back to back to back to back. So kind of like uptime for a year or something on all four of those projects actually.
Wow.
But
That does sound like you've been busy.
yeah, now I'm fun
So,
employed though. Now it's summertime. All those have delivered, and I'm mixing a song for Ben Williams and Cindy Winters for their project Butterfly Black, and writing some music with Joel and Des for their music project, and yeah, just like a
Nice.
nice mellow summer now.
Very, very good. Get your pool time in. Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, I need to like learn what the word leisure is defined by.
I
I've
have
heard
two
people say,
jobs. Like, what do you?
you know what I'm saying? I understand that it's a word that people use, and I understand that it refers to some life context, but I don't understand what it means in application.
Right, right. Yeah, I don't know what vacation is. I haven't had one
Yeah,
in, I can't even remember.
I'm telling you.
Yeah. Well, lastly, I guess what's the best piece of advice you've ever received in your career, and maybe how has it shaped you as a as a musician, engineer, polyglot?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah. And Brands, Atlas didn't really subscribe. Uh, I guess good advice that I've been given. That's a really great question. Off the top, I mean, I've been lucky enough to have some incredible mentors, but I don't know that I could like put in like in the crucible. I don't know that I could reduce it to one koan, but
Hmm.
the like larger thrust of that narrative, if I could reinterpret it in my own terms, would just be to like follow your own authenticity. Nobody really gives a shit. Nobody really gives a shit what you're doing or what you've done or what you're about to do. At the end of the day, like this is all self-expression. So try to get, there's a commerce part of it. You got to make enough money to make a living and shit. But at the end of the day, like run as fast as you can towards the things that authentically inspire you. And I think that the work that you attract and the work that you make will reflect that. And so will your outcomes necessarily as well.
Nice. Cool. Very cool. Well, so where can people find you online?
I don't have a website, man.
So,
I have an Instagram. If you want to find me on
mhm,
Instagram, it's pretty dormant. It's my at is B as in boy, D as in dog, Bender as in Futurama.
mhm.
But yeah, I try to keep my online presence pretty small, man. I had a website for studios throughout the years, and like I just to be really
Yeah.
really honest, brutally honest with you, man. I never got a cold call from a website where it was work that I wanted, or like getting paid was easy, or like people were
Mhm.
cool. You know what I mean? So I just kind of realized that like at a certain point, that's all just vanity if you're busy enough. So
Mhm. Fair
I
enough.
don't know, for
Yeah.
better or
No.
for worse. I'm on
Yeah.
Instagram, but otherwise I'm just in this room.
Yeah. Right. Right. So you actually, I actually wanted to ask you this earlier, but I guess we'll leave this as the last question. Like you're tell us about your cool console idea, because I know that's something that you kind of been working on that's really unique for a long time.
Oh, yeah. So the WSW.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are a lot of great pictures of it online, and the modules are actually out right now because I'm doing some tech work on them. But basically, I was lucky enough to find a mid 1960s Austrian broadcast console made by a company called WSW. Um, it translates from German to Vienna Low Current Plant, and these guys made like no joke electric shavers and clocks and stuff like that too. But back in the day, the way the licensing worked in Europe, Siemens and Telefunken were the overarching broadcast giants, right? And all of
Mhm.
the sub territories and all of the individual nations through Europe could buy licensing and distribution rights. And part of that licensing deal, that's how you get like EAB, Sheps 221s, and things like that. And part of the licensing deal was that these guys had the rights to make their own designs and stuff too. So WSW, being Austrian, was the next door neighbor to Germany, and this is a long way around to say that I think that they had like a for real Napoleon thing going with Siemens, because there's no real defensible reason for this console to be built like it is. It's just this
Hmm.
insanely overbuilt germanium silicon console from the 60s. Like it's so overbuilt that the faders are actuated with ball bearings in the track. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Like they made their own transformers, they made their own inductors in territory. Um, yeah, and so the one that I found happened to be in rack cases. Some crazy asshole in the 60s like bought it from the factory in rack cases to tour, and it had like the whole wiring harness and like original subframes and the whole shit. And so over the course of 2.5 years, me and some friends that were working with me like recapped it and got it up to sort of modern spec, did some mods, and then I found a brilliant furniture designer called Francois Chambard who made a piece of furniture to house it all. Um, So yeah, so it's 22 channels of these vintage WSW units, which are crazy. Like they have like RCA meatball transistors in it. Tone Lux modern summing mixer to kind of unify it all. The WSW and the Tone Lux basically it's just like a very realized split console. You can kind of patch into any of the ins or outs on either side of it independently. And then on the other side of it, on the far right, it's just standard 19-inch. So I've just got kind of inputs for whatever you want to throw in there. Right now, I've got my stay levels, an LA2A, a Pultec, a Boss KM6B mixer, a BG2, 33611, and a Thermionic Culture Vulture.
Nice.
The Vulture, the Phoenix, sorry. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, like all the modules are out, like I said, but there it is. Got a little fun little drum zone going over here. The Pulsar and the MPC and all of the sort of one samplers and the hex inverter Euro rack modules. Yeah, it's pretty. I guess have you seen the room since I put all this stuff together?
I mean, I've seen some of the photos you posted online, but like not like I don't think I've seen a full photo. You know what I mean?
Proper
Bits and bobs. Like I love those desks you have for the keyboards. Those things are like banging. The
those are pretty great, right?
You have. Yeah, those. Yeah. So
these are designed by my good friend Adam Kriskow. He's a wonderful, incredible drummer and also happens to be a wonderful woodworker. And so he builds those. He has a business with another drummer friend of mine, actually, and they're building those. He built a bunch of those for Stein. That's how I got hit to it.
Got it. Nice. Yeah, I sort of did. I went the IKEA route with all of my synthesizers, but it's sort of like part of me is like, there's things I like about it, and then there's things that I don't like about it, and I've been trying to think about a different way to like redo it, So
sure.
Yeah, those have always those shelving systems have always intrigued me. So.
Check it out, man. Adam Kriskow Design, I think is his ad. I'll send it to you. But he's the man. He's a lovely guy. All of them are custom fit too. So like the other one that I have.
You can specify like what you kind of want to put in it. Is that what you're saying? Like with
dimensions? Yeah. Specifically, like this one is huge, right? So I got a Moog 1, I got a memory Moog and an OB8. And like I gave him height and depth and all that stuff for each of them. And yeah. He made it everything fit. I think, those OBs are house, so
yeah.
I feel like that's kind of one of the problems that I see with those off the shelf solutions is that the bigger, older, beefier stuff doesn't usually fit.
Right. Well, cool. I appreciate your time. This has been awesome.
Yeah, man. Anytime.
Cool. Well, we'll catch up soon. I got some stuff I'll follow up with you offline about, but I really appreciate your time. This has been fantastic.
Absolutely, man. Cool. Yeah, anytime. Let me know if you need anything else.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll do, buddy.